I think the hardest thing in the world to do is to create authentic human community. I think it's the hardest thing to do and the most important thing to do, because there's nothing we need more than each other and nothing we hate more than each other.
I think I was 10, 11, 12, and I came to you and I said, what do I do if I don't know if I believe in God?
Even people who believe deeply in Jesus get really depressed. You would hope it would be a way out. Believe in God, believe in Jesus, you'll never feel depressed, you'll never feel lonely, and yet that's not true. So there must be something like really deep in terms of the human structure, the psychological structure of us as humans that allows us to be so vulnerable to what we call mental health.
You're listening to the Mind Shift podcast. My name is Erwin McManus, and I'm here with my dad, Erwin McManus, and all of our new friends in London.
We're here live in London.
In London!
This is so much fun.
It could be fun.
It will be fun.
I haven't decided yet.
I think we should talk about what you were telling me earlier about how do you start afresh?
How do you
begin anew?
Yeah.
Because one of the things that we've experienced a lot is coming out of the pandemic, coming out of the quarantine, even though we're several years out of it, people are still struggling with moving into a new future. And a lot of people seem to be trapped, almost paralyzed, emotionally, psychologically, even spiritually. And it seems that so many conversations we have are around a sense of purposelessness, and that people just feel as if they're drifting through life. And that can develop so much anxiety, so much stress, so much depression. And I think that's a really important subject.
I think it's an important subject. I think it's something that I've also struggled with my entire life, like how to actually have a fresh start and how to have a new start. And then especially within the context of faith and God. I think I was 10, 11, 12, and I came to you and I said, what do I do if I don't know if I believe in God? And what did you say to me?
Yeah, we were driving in a car, and he was just a little kid, really small, maybe 8, 9.
I'm always 8 or 9 in your stories.
No, you're always 10. I moved you younger.
I was always. I met one of our clients. We have a business together, a few businesses together, and one of our clients that we've known for a long time. He's this amazing Korean guy, and he's like this monster businessman. And he came to me and he sat me down and was like, "Dude, I thought you were 12." And we had breakfast, and I was like, "No, I'm 36." And he's like, "That's super weird. What happened after 12?" And I was like, "I don't know. He just never talked about me ever again."
That's because he went wild, so I didn't want to tell everybody.
At 12?
No,
at 12?
I'm just kidding.
No.
But we were driving in the car, and he said, "Dad, I don't think I would believe in God if I had not been raised in a Christian home." And we're driving, and I'm trying to stay calm, and I said, "Well, why do you think that is, buddy?" And he said, "You said I have so many doubts and questions." And I said, "Oh, doubts and questions, those are normal. I have those all the time." And then we just kept driving, and I said, "So what are you going to do?" And he thought about it, and he said, "Well, I've already met God, so I'm not sure what I can do." And I thought it was so interesting. And I realized in that moment, you're going to have a very hard life, because you're asking really deep, hard questions. And for you, faith, belief didn't come easy. Some people, it just seems like it's like breathing.
Yeah.
And for other people, it's like suffocating.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that's the challenge, is that when you're a parent especially, you just kind of want your kids to embrace all your values and beliefs without questioning them. And I told you so doesn't work in the deepest philosophical questions of the human soul. And that's why I love now, all these years later, we do this podcast, because this is the "I told you so" or "because I said so" isn't good enough in life. And it's never been good enough for me. It's always, I'm a person that still wonders how I possibly believe.
How do you believe?
It's a crazy thing. I'm speaking on Sunday, and I had this awareness of going, wow, I can't believe I believe in God. I can't believe I believe in Jesus. This is the strangest thing. And yet I do. And I've somewhere shifted along the way where I don't even believe, I feel that I know. But I don't know, I know that I don't know how I know. Does that make sense? You know, and that is for me one of the great challenges. And so I'm always questioning, I'm always trying to figure things out. And I don't think that anything I believe is impenetrable. I feel like I should always be questioning my beliefs. I should always be questioning what I think are convictions or beliefs and testing them out in real life.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about Mosaic. I started Mosaic. By the way, I'm the person who started Mosaic. But I started Mosaic in a nightclub. Really.
So like, okay, real quick.
What?
Sorry, go. You started it.
I did.
Yeah, it's your thing.
But I didn't know it was starting like something that we would talk about in London. I started Mosaic because I had a lot of friends who were atheists, agnostics, who had many different religious backgrounds, who were like me, and they would never walk into any kind of religious environment. And they were really searching and trying to make sense of life. And so one of my friends found a nightclub that Prince owned in LA, and we convinced the owner to let us start meeting there on Sunday. And I wanted to pick a place that Christians wouldn't go and non-Christians always went. And the night before, and so they knew where it was. You don't have to tell them the address. They go, oh yeah, you know, and the Glam Slam. And so we would go there, and that's where we began our conversations about God, about faith, about Jesus, and that's how Mosaic really began. Was just an attempt to create a space for people I loved that were really sincerely atheists and agnostics and Buddhists and Hindus and Catholics and so many other things, but didn't feel a connection to God, but were desperately trying to see if there was more in life.
But you would do this thing where you would, like, if there was too many Christians, if the ratio from people who believe in God to people who don't believe in God got too uneven, like too many Christians, you know, not enough people who were new to faith, you would shut it down. And this was like pre-Google, pre-social media, and you would just like shut the location down, give them 1 week's notice, and be like, I'm only going to tell the people who actually invite people who bring people to church.
Yeah, I was really intrigued by raves. And
By raves?
By raves, and how you could only get there.
Have you been? No, look at me. Have you? They're not here.
And,
I would just love to see it. You with some glow sticks.
I just love the fact that there were these events and communities that you could only get to if you knew how to be invited.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to use that model in some ways for Mosaic. And we would have bouncers at the door that if you were a Christian by yourself, you were not allowed in. You could only come in if you had a friend who didn't believe in God, and so they were your pass. And it was just really amazing to have a place that was just jam-packed with people who were atheists and agnostics.
Yeah.
And we did a survey one Easter, which is where Christians go to church. And we had over 1,000 people say, I'm an atheist, but if God were out there, I'd be open. And that's one of the things that made Mosaic really unique, is that it was a place where people who really were outside of faith felt safe to search for God in a community that they could trust. And then I had to start shifting. Honestly, I had to, if you live life long enough, you realize, oh, that wasn't the best idea. And because, you know, my kids came to me and said, hey, Dad, we're Christians. Are we not allowed at Mosaic? I thought, that's a good point. You know, and so we kind of had to expand our view. I just didn't want it to be a place where Christians went just because it was cooler than other places. I wanted it to be a place where people nurtured the environment together and said, we want a place for all of humanity. We want a place where everyone belongs. We want a place where people belong before they ever believe. And most of the time, the church is seen as an exclusive space, an exclusive community. You have to believe in Jesus to, in a sense, to belong. And we wanted to create a place where he said, look, you don't have to believe to belong. We're going to love you, and you can journey with us, and you can do life with us. And we're so confident in the beauty of this message and the power of this truth that I think if you're just around it environmentally, you're going to meet God. And that was a part of it. And I do have that confidence. I actually do believe in God, and I think he's everywhere. And that he's subversive, because he has designed the entire universe to convince you that you belong to him. And, the Bible says that all of creation declares the glory of God. So God's always speaking to you, telling you that he created you. And so you have to want to go deaf to not hear him inviting you to himself. And so I just want to be a part of that conversation. All right, but let's move on in our subject.
Let's get into it.
All right.
Okay. You guys still there?
Yeah?
You guys are so disciplined. They breathe so quietly.
So I'm kind of curious. Maybe it's not a valid subject here, but in LA, we have a real struggle with mental health. People are just really struggling with panic attacks and being stressed and feeling depression. And is that something that just isn't a thing here?
They haven't seen the sun. They just saw it today for the first time.
And maybe you've had 1 week of really good weather, so you're okay now. And because one of the things I find to be really interesting is that even people who believe deeply in Jesus get really depressed. And you would hope it would be a way out. Believe in God, believe in Jesus. You never get stressed out. You'll never have a panic attack. You'll never feel depressed. You'll never feel lonely. And yet that's not true. So there must be something really deep in terms of the human structure, the psychological structure of us as humans that allows us to be so vulnerable to what we call mental health.
I have this therapist. I go to a therapist.
Yes.
I've just told you somewhat recently. And she's this Israeli Jewish feminist, super woke. She claims this. This is not me. But I picked her because I wanted someone different than my mom. Because my mom's real clear. It's in the Bible, or it's at church, or you're going to hell. And she's serious. So that logic didn't always work for me. So I had to find other means to educate myself and to learn and to grow. And I was kind of going through a season of figuring things out. Post-COVID, pre-COVID, things were different. I helped start a bunch of campuses at our church and was traveling all over and getting to speak and be a part of it, and then doing this podcast, and felt like things were good. You were a part of Venice. We had someone right here in the front row who, we have amazing people. Carlos and I were doing it together. Marcos here from Brazil, who flew out from LA. We had dinner the night before I came out, and I convinced him. I think I manipulated him. I was like, just buy the ticket. You can do it. You're your own boss. Who's telling you no? And then he's here, and then COVID happened and everything shut down. And I felt I felt it in my mind or my heart or my body that things were shifting. Things were going to be different. And we grinded for that first year like crazy just to keep things alive. And then it was alive, and then it worked, and it was online, and things were good. And I felt like I needed to move forward or do something different. But it was really hard for me to figure out what that new thing was. And I think that a common denominator through my whole life has been releasing my own self to be new again. Is that I think I'm my biggest, not enemy, but the voices inside my head remind me who I was more than people do in the world. And so I thought it was really interesting because Miri, my therapist, we're going to talk about her first name basis. She said this really interesting thing yesterday. She said belonging is crucial to survival, for all humanity. And I love it because I come from a place where I'm talking about God to her and she's talking about Buddhism, and we give each other books, and I sent her your new book, and she sent me some new book about when all things fall apart. It was crazy and amazing. And we were talking about this thing about how important it is for us to have community, and not just to have community, but to feel like we belong. But sometimes it's so hard to belong even to our own selves. And at least for me. And so that self-acceptance has been really woo-woo and new agey, and I hate it because once Jesus accepts me, I should feel accepted, right? But I don't. So I have this thing, and we were driving the other day and we were talking about how important it is to start new, and whether it's with churches or whether it's forgiveness or whether it's each other and each other's lives, me and my sister, me and you had to put up with a lot with me growing up, and you're I've always thanked you for risking your reputation on me again and again and again. But I had this question. So how do you build a new life when you still feel the remnants of the old one?
That's a really good question. My mind goes right away to the quarantine. How long were you guys shut down during COVID? 6 months? A year?
2 years.
18 months, 2 years. 2 years.
2
Wow.
years.
So we learned two things. If we could have designed a social experiment
Yeah.
where we isolated you for 2 years to see how humans function best, here's two things we learned. Before you were shut down for 2 years, you might have thought to yourself, I'm stressed out because my life is too busy. Anybody ever had that thought? I'm working too hard. I have too many things going on. I'm juggling too many plates. And then for 2 years, you didn't get to do anything. And you got more stressed out, not less. So one side of the experiment let us know, you're not stressed out because you were too busy. Because when you were not doing anything, you psychologically began to fall apart. The second thing that we got to see in this experiment is that you're not designed to do life alone. Because if you ever thought people are the problem,
And they are.
well, that's true. Yeah, okay, so I give that. People are the problem, but no people is not the solution. And so what we had is 2 years where we were disconnected, isolated, and what we know without any doubt from a pure empirical perspective is that humans are not designed to do life alone. So when you talk about how do you let go of your past and move on to the future, here's two things you can know right away. The future that is ideal for you is a future that doesn't necessarily have less work. It just has to have more purpose. And it isn't something that you can do alone. You need to do it in community. And so whatever that future looks like, it's going to be with people. And I think a lot of times we're looking for our, quote, purpose or our destiny. And what we really need to be looking for is our tribe. We need to be looking for the people that we want to do life with. Because the moment you find the people you want to do life with, all of a sudden your purpose and your destiny and your future becomes clear. And I think sometimes we don't understand how we human beings are designed. And I think this is interesting even when you look at the Bible. Because a lot of Christians will say things like, all you need is God, right? All you need is Jesus. But that's not functionally true. You know that, right? We even sing a song where we get to lie to ourselves.
Don't do it. Don't quote the song, though, because we know those people.
I'm going to quote it.
Don't.
And
This is why we have less friends than we could have.
Okay, this is what I call it. I call it romantic truth, things that aren't true, but they feel true. Okay? All right, so it's romantic truth because it's worship. All right, so there's a song that says, you're all I need to God and you're all I want. But the truth is, there isn't a moment in my life that God's all I want. There's other things I want. I want coffee. I want pizza without consequences, right? You know, there's so many things I want in life. And there's some other things I need. I can't even say, God, you're all I need because I need oxygen. I need something to drink. I need food. You're not designed to only want or need God. But that's what you're told spiritually. In fact, all the way back in Genesis, it says that Adam is by himself and God has him name all the animals. So he has purpose, intention in life. And then it says, and God saw it was not good for man to be alone. It wasn't Adam who said to God, hey, God, you missed something. Like, I need a woman, and
Why'd you look at me?
I need a person in my life, okay. Right? You definitely need a woman.
No,
and,
we're good right now. Keep going.
It's God who looked at Adam and said, it is not good for man to be alone.
Right.
So it's God who says, you're not designed for only a relationship with me. You're designed for relationships with other human beings. And sometimes I'm convinced part of the reason a lot of people who are atheists or agnostics or just indifferent, it's because we have so many cliches about what it means to be spiritual that simply aren't rooted in reality or truth. And an honest, objective person go, that can't be real. And if we could just become more truthful, it would be life-giving for us. And so I've gone in a circle back to your question, How do we begin to move into the new?
And if you're new to this podcast, this is what he does. He never answers the actual question.
And I answer the question
You're
as
like
it is
listening-
interpreted in my brain.
You're like listening to the debate the other night. That's like what that was. You
The
know?
U.S. debate.
The U.S. debate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of us, when we want to start afresh, want to start afresh with old material. And so you're like, I want a new life, but I'm going to keep my same mental patterns. I'm going to keep the same emotions that I have. And the reality is that you ever move to a different city because you want a new start? Anybody ever done that? I've met people who leave LA, I need a new start. And I go, the problem is wherever you go, you're taking you. And so you don't get a new start. You got the old you in a new place. And you'll get to ruin that new place really quick if you don't change the things inside of you. And so the only way you can actually have a new start is to find a new you. So the change has to be internal, not external. And when you make the change internally, somehow, amazingly, the external environment begins to change. Most of us want even God to change our circumstances without changing us. If God changed your circumstances and did not change you, you would destroy those circumstances and return them to what they were before. Because you're the creator of your environment without realizing it, even as you are the creator of your future. And so how do you start anew? You decide, I'm going to be a new version of me. Or even more specifically, the best version of me. You have to look inside of yourself and go, I no longer choose to be this person. I have that characteristic, but it's not who I am. And, even like emotions, you ever notice how hard it is to get rid of a bad emotion?
Yeah.
In fact, it's easier to get rid of a good emotion. You ever notice that? In fact, it's hard to hold on to a good emotion.
Yeah.
You ever been happy and then your ex-girlfriend calls you and now you're unhappy?
You guys, we're going to mute you.
or you ever been happy, but then something happens and you're unhappy 5 seconds later?
Yes.
Happiness doesn't seem to hold up, but unhappiness stays with you. It lingers. I guarantee everyone in this room, at one point in your life, you were filled with incredible gratitude for life, right? Every one of you. It just didn't last. Gratefulness is hard to hold on to, but ungratefulness, it stays with you. Bitterness, it stays with you.
Why does it last longer?
Every negative emotion sticks to us while every positive one seems to run through us. There's a reason for that. Though you cannot change a negative emotion without changing the story it lives in. No emotion can exist inside of you without a story that keeps it alive. That's why we have dreams and nightmares. When we dream, it's the story of our positive emotions. When we have nightmares, those are the stories of our negative emotions. So if you have bitterness inside of you, there's a relationship, a story you keep telling yourself over and over and over again. It allows bitterness to live. The story of you creates the space for the emotions that define you. So the only way you can get rid of those negative emotions is to change the story of you. And by the way, that's what Jesus does. He comes and gives you a new story. And all of a sudden, you're in an elevated story. And you begin to find a way to break free from those emotions. And I think it's true for all of us. I mean, I'm from El Salvador. I'm an immigrant. I never knew my real father. My grandparents raised me in the beginning. I met my mom really when I was 3 or 4. She married a guy involved in what we called creative underground economies. And I'm sure you have that world here. And so he had an alias, which is why my name is McManus, because he had an alias. And he convinced the police we'd been robbed. So I came out Irish, even though I'm Spanish. And so I grew up with a massive identity crisis. I grew up with a massive sense of isolation. From the age of around 4 or 5, I started having traumatic nightmares that stayed active while I was fully awake. Ended up in a psychiatric chair by the time I was 10 years old, in and out of a hospital for 6 months. It would be easy for me to live in that trauma all my life. But what I realized was that there were stories I would tell myself, and those stories defined me. And I had to make a hard choice to start telling a different story of me. And I became an adult and I had an encounter with Jesus. What was to me extraordinary was the possibility that the creator of the universe designed me with intention, and that I could live at an intention that transcended time and space, and that I could be a part of a heroic narrative to make a difference in the world. And the only way you can begin to move to the new is to have a new you. The change has to begin from the inside out, and it's rooted in the story that you tell yourself about who you are.
That is so good. And also so much more than what I asked. Have there been moments in your life where you feel like, because I mean, you've been doing church for so long. I mean, you've done businesses, you've had really successful moments. You've had moments where you've lost everything. I've been a part of both.
Yeah.
I've been part of bankruptcy that we never filed for because you're too stubborn. I've been part of moments where we've had more than we could have ever imagined. And every time you always go back to the same thing, and we've always gone back to the same thing. And like I think the broken moments and in our best moments, you've always gone back to helping like build the church and helping invest into people like McLaren, who's amazing. And I heard his parents are here, and I can't wait to meet them. But why? Why when it's so messy? Because my thing is like I grew up with it, and I grew up in the church, and so sometimes stepping into churches makes me feel really uncomfortable. I really like art galleries. I really like white walls and Mosaic. That's why I love the west side of London, because it just feels like this, someone just spray painted everything white. And people are the art. And at Mosaic in LA, we painted all the walls white, and because I felt like just living in these like black box theaters was just so depressing. And I was like, people are the art. People are the things up against these walls. And that is why we're here, is what we need to remember. And we have 4 lights in the whole, well, I guess we have another 4 because Austin added some when I was in Mexico City. But like everything we kind of simplified post-COVID. But one of the things like growing up, like I was 17, 18. I remember getting a call from Mariah, and she was like, there's men trying to get inside the house. And I remember going to church on Sunday, and your best friend, who was like Denzel's bodyguard, this is a big man. He looked like he came out of like WWE wrestling. And he's standing very close to you, James. And I was like, James, why are you so close to my dad? And he's like, you might need to talk to your dad after this. And I sat down with you, and we had this big fight. It's the only time I think we ever had like a physical altercation where I'm like, which is different because I'm like, I think I was like 130 pounds, and they don't know this is kgs. So I was like, 7 steaks, and you were like 10. And we had this conversation around like life and death and what's worth risking your life for. And there were essentially people trying to kill you because you were saying things in the church that people didn't agree with. And so I became really bitter and really angry, and mostly against Christians. Yeah. And I hated it. I couldn't stomach it. I couldn't be around. I would show up to, this is really sad, and I don't even know if you know this, but like I would show up to Mosaic on Sunday night, like hungover from the night before, and Mariah would pick me up, and sometimes I probably was still drunk, and I always smelled like cigarettes, and I was like always this mess. And you never let on. You just kind of like, all right, you probably should shower. Or like, hey, you want to go have dinner afterwards? And you kind of always just like created a space for me. And you were just really this beautiful person. But I could see the moments it wore you down. I could see the moments that it wore on you. And the reason I ask that is because I think, it's easy to talk about my space of like being new again. But I think for you, why did you always choose when you got a fresh start to come back and help build the thing that was so broken?
That's a really hard question in that.
I'm going to make you answer it.
Yeah. I've wanted to tap out many times. Yeah. And I remember about 20 years ago, I said to my wife, Kim, hey, I'm going to spend the next 20 years just being an artist. I'm going to make films. I'm going to design clothes. I've given the church enough time. I'm just going to create beautiful things. And she said, sure, go ahead. And then a year later, I had a fashion company and a film company. And she said, we need to talk. And I said, why? She goes, it's like you created this whole new life. I don't know where you're going. And I said, we did talk a year ago when I said, I'm going to shift my direction and become an artist. And she goes, yeah, but that conversation doesn't count because I didn't think you could succeed. And, um, and I've had that temptation. I love writing. And I thought, oh, I could go live in some little mountain town and just write novels and disappear and not have to interact with human beings. And just on a personal level, one, I wrote this book called The Genius of Jesus because I wanted to know if Jesus historically measured as a genius. And I've always been fascinated by human genius, whether it was Da Vinci or Picasso or Einstein or Fisher and I wanted to see if Jesus measured against those geniuses throughout time, Mozart. And what really struck me is the reason it's hard to think of Jesus as a genius is that every genius has a domain in which that genius is expressed. And so with Mozart, you can hear his music. With Picasso, you can see his art. With Fisher, you can watch his moves on a chessboard. But with Jesus, you can't really see the functional domain of his genius because Jesus' genius translated into the human spirit. His art form was us in making us human again. And in just in a very personal way, I felt like that was my conversation with God. I don't use that language lightly. I felt like I was very tempted because I love creating like graphic novels and I love designing clothes and I love designing different things. And I just felt like my principal intention in life was to make people my art form. That if I could help people become the most unique version of themselves, that would be the transcendent art of my life. I think the hardest thing in the world to do is to create authentic human community. I do. I think it's the hardest thing to do and the most important thing to do. I think what McLaren is endeavoring to do is the most significant and fragile endeavor on earth. Because there's nothing we need more than each other and nothing we hate more than each other. And so people have massive church hurt. And I have to try to remind people that you don't really have church hurt, you have human hurt. It just happens that those are humans that were in a church. But if you didn't go to church, you'd still have human hurt. See, people who are atheists and agnostics, they have hurt too. In fact, there is no human being that doesn't go through pain, that doesn't feel betrayal or suffering or disappointment in other people or sense of abandonment. And so the reason I keep doing this is I actually think when I'm drawn to the most difficult challenges in life, I'm just drawn to whatever I think is the most difficult problem to solve. And I remember one time in an interview with Bill Gates, now I'm feeling a little sociopathic because Bill Gates, they asked him at a TED conference, Bill, why did you address the malaria issue? Why did you try to solve the malaria problem? He goes, I love puzzles. And when I heard that, I thought, that's an incredibly intense lack of empathy. And then Chris tried to recover from it, asked him again, yeah, but malaria, you're ending this human suffering. Why? And he goes, I just thought this is a puzzle that maybe no one but me could solve. And I thought, oh, okay, Bill loves puzzles. And but I admire someone going, here's a problem that's so important, I'm gonna give my life to solving it. So Elon Musk, you can't fix the human problem. We're just not going to save Earth, so let's colonize Mars. I just love the out-of-the-box thinking, right? And we're talking about, climate change and global warming, and Elon's like, let's just take another planet, right? And let's ruin two. And, right, and see how many we can go to. And I think, for me personally, the most important and challenging problem to solve is how do you help human beings love each other and live in community and walk together in a meaningful communion where we're connected to each other. And so that's why I do this, because I think that it's what we need most in the world. and what we're most likely to fail at doing. And the most difficult thing that McLaren's going to have to deal with is no matter how hard you try to create a perfect community, the moment people are involved, it's imperfect. And so we work with imperfect material, which is us, to try to do something that's an ideal, which is us doing life together.
We got to wrap this up.
Um,
It's time to go.
we did want to have a couple of questions.
Anybody have questions?
McLaren, do you have a question?
Oh, we have a hand in the back. Just stand up and yell it. But if you're rude,
Oh, we have a
don't
hand in the
yell
back.
as much. We have a mic. I don't think we have a. Oh wait, go right here in the back. Pat. What's your name? Toby? Tony. Amazing.
Tony, you're going to have to yell or move forward. Walk up here. Come on, Tony, come on up.
Sorry.
Everybody
Get
get
over
Tony.
Tony. We have a mic?
Okay, we got a mic.
Grab one. Sorry.
All right, we're gonna hope this mic can be turned on, Tony.
Surprise guest, Tony. He's actually a plant. We flew him out here. Yeah. You can say it if you want.
No, I was just saying, it sounds like you're an incredibly creative person. From the disruption you created, the way you started Mosaic, to like creating films and fashion, etc. The church is like, at least the way I grew up, is an incredibly traditional space. So I wonder, like, when you first started thinking about how you curated the community of Mosaic at the beginning, how you became comfortable with like challenging the mold and breaking the mold of what you were building, and you were innovating again. Like, how do you keep fresh and out?
Did you get that?
Yeah. How did you do what you do? And like the crazy, like why did you go to a nightclub? You had a church building. Why would you do that to a child like me?
One of the things I felt was really important was to bring the integration of creativity and spirituality. And I don't know why historically fully, but creativity and spirituality became enemies. And the church seemed to be locked into ritual and routine, standardization, conformity. It's easier to oppress people if you can standardize them. It's easier to control people if you can move them toward conformity. And so the whole idea of creativity felt threatening to, I think, the religious institutions. And when we started Mosaic, what we wanted to say is, God is a creative God. And he created us in his image, so we are creative beings. And by the way, it wasn't just Christianity. I was in New York 30 years ago at an event speaking on my conviction as an anthropologist that every human being is actually inherently a genius and that everyone has creative capacity. And you can see this even just from one simple example. Everyone in this room speaks at least English, and you learned English when you were 2, which means that you were born a linguistic savant. And if you needed to, you learned 2 languages or 3 languages or 4 languages. And some of you think you're not good at languages, but when you were 2, if they had moved you to Tokyo, you'd have learned Japanese. It would have been child's play. They would have moved you to Manila, you would have learned Tagalog instantly. And so a huge part of it for me, Tony, was a view of humanity, an anthropological conviction that human beings are inherently created to be creative, and that religion and all institutions are trying to suppress that creativity because it's easier to control people who are unaware of their creative capacity. And I wanted the church to become the epicenter of human creativity. And that's been my fight for 40 years, to convince people that everyone is both a work of art and an artist at work, and that your life is a creative expression of your essence. And then this whole Christian philosophy that just drove me insane of, if God wants it to happen, it'll happen. Like, you're so fatalistic. And I'm like, you ever been to a bad meeting and hear somebody say, everyone who God wanted here is here? How about you just did terrible marketing? right? And we use incredibly fatalistic language about the future. Well, only God knows or creates the future. It's not true. Same way that God creates silkworms to create silk, and beavers to create dams, and ants to create colonies, and bees to create honey. Humans are created to create the future. And the moment you understand who you are, you begin to actualize that potential. But if you don't know you're created to create, you will not create. If you don't know that you are designed to create the future, you will not create the future. You'll passively enter someone else's future. Right now, in this building, we're inside of someone else's imagination. Everything that exists was once an invisible material that was an idea or a dream in someone's imagination. Humans are the only species that can materialize the invisible, and that's because we're created in the image of God. So that's my big answer to that question, and I feel like humanity desperately needs a revolution of human identity and creativity and innovation to understand who we are. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, hi. Right next to Tony.
We have
Thank-
one back here too.
We have one in the back too. We'll take like 2 more questions. Is
Okay,
that okay?
just
Is that
run
okay,
2 more
McLaren?
questions.
Is that good? Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I can hear you either way. Yeah.
Aware of my creative capacity. I have created in the past, but I'm really stuck. So I have a spiritual practice, I have a physical practice, I have a community around me, I have a lot of love, I practice gratitude. But how do I overcome creative blocks, when I'm not able to have output?
How do you overcome a creative block?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. As a writer, everybody talks about writer's block. I don't really believe in writer's block. I believe in like writer's garbage and writer's junk, and because my writing is bad, or it's not at the level I want it to be. Most of the time, writer's block is that you don't want to create what you actually see or write down what you actually have at the tip of your mind. And you have to be willing to write bad things to get to good things. You have to be willing to create ugly things to get the beautiful things. You have to be willing to do the imperfect to get to the beautiful. And so what I would just say is stop trying to be perfect and just create whatever you can right now. And I have a friend named Maku Fujimura.
Oh, wait, hold on. I have a question.
Yeah.
Because we're the worst salespeople. We're not trying to sell you, but we want to tell this story. So you've written books for 25 years.
Yeah.
And so you wrote a book called The 7 Frequencies of Communication. But the cooler thing is that we started a publishing company to produce it. You've written for like Penguin Random House, all of these different majors. But I finally convinced you, and I'm scared because we just released it 2 days ago, and like it's selling, it's going good. But I thought maybe I ruined your whole career. But when you started writing this book, you had no deadlines because I can't really tell you to turn the book in at a certain day. I try, I yell, I call, I come over to the house, I harass you. But you had block. It took you a while. It took you 3 months to put like pen to paper. What happened?
Well, no, this was an accident.
No, but it was an accident that I forced you to, put on paper.
I mean, the biggest writer block I had was during the pandemic when I wrote The Genius of Jesus. I outlined the whole thing, and I actually looked at it and thought, wow, this is garbage. And then I started all over again and mapped it out, and I looked at it and thought, yeah, this is really garbage. And then I called the publisher, HarperCollins, I think it was, or Penguin Random House, and I said, hey, I'll give you the money back. I cannot write this book, and I can't meet the deadline. And I had the worst response I could have ever expected. They said, we believe in this book so much, just take your time. I didn't want that. I wanted out of the contract. I couldn't write this book. And part of the reason was, I really love Jesus, and I have great respect for him. And I thought, I can't write a book that won't diminish who he is. And so I was just terrified. So I ended up writing the book like this. I wrote the book as if I did not believe in Jesus as God. And I just wrote the book as an anthropologist going, is Jesus a genius? And when I finished the book, they said, could you go back and write in there that you actually do believe in him? because it's very convincing that you don't and the way you wrote it. I wrote it for all my friends who are atheists and agnostics. The moment you create for others, you break through the block. And with this book, The 7 Frequencies of Communication, by the way, it's officially coming out October 15th, but we have copies here. Aaron asked me to create a 15-minute gift to give away to people because we have this master class on communication. So I went home on Thursday, I think it was, and I started trying to create a 15-minute video gift. But then I'm somewhat esoteric, and so I didn't sleep for 3 days. I broke out into cold sweats, and I just started downloading these frequencies.
I showed up to the house. This man looked like Castaway. Beard grown, hair messy, hasn't slept for 2.5 days. He's like, I got it. And I was like, you got the free thing, the 15-minute thing that should take you 5 minutes? He's like, I stayed up for 3 days straight.
Yeah, my wife saw me at like 4 in the morning, and she goes, are you okay? Are you okay? And I said, I can't stop seeing this. You know, it's interesting. The ancient Greeks, the word genius comes from the etymology genie, because they believed that genius came from the gods. It was like given to normal men. And I think sometimes in life, if you like open yourself up, you don't have a block. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just started seeing these communication frequencies. And I saw them in full color, in design. And by the time I got there on Monday, they turned the camera on, and I taught for 6 hours on the 7 frequencies of communication.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, it became a book.
Yeah.
And I look at it, and I just think that we're designed as human beings to have epiphanies. What ends up happening is that you live life, you have experiences, you're curious, you grow, and your brain is absorbing all this learning, all this information, and then when you need it, when you're in a crisis, it explodes. So I think we have writer's block when we're more worried about ourselves than how the art or the gift can help others. And
good.
so I'll just write the worst book I can. Maybe it'll help someone. And then it changes everything for you. We only have one or two more
Yeah, one more question.
One more question over here. And
we-
we had one over there. but
Right there. And then I think
She's right there. Come on up.
Someone in the middle of the room.
Yeah, someone
You're
right here also. Why don't you stand
there we
up
go.
and be ready? Hello.
Is this on? Can you hear her, Mike? Yeah, there we go. Hi.
So,
What's your name?
I'm Lucy,
Hi.
and I just moved here from Los Angeles. I have been following you guys for so long. I'm somewhat emotional. I've met you before. I got baptized in Hollywood,
Wow.
and I have been praying so long that God helps me find a church that I resonate with. So nervous to move to London and change my life. And you guys are here, starting Mosaic here. So I'm so grateful and so happy that he's listening.
He's listening so much, he gave you McLaren.
I'm so excited to start a community here. And I just thank you for your guidance and everything you do to sacrifice. My main question is, since you love humanity so much, do you ever get overwhelmed with the amount of thoughts in your head to try to create, to change, to make a difference? And if you do get overwhelmed with how deep that you think, how do you release those thoughts in order to create more for people that you love?
That question must clearly be for you.
No, I don't know. I just hang out with him a lot. And you know, I was thinking about this with the last question. You're a very curious person. You're annoyingly curious. I spend 20 meals a week with you probably from like early morning to like evening. And we work a lot. We work a lot. We're incessant workers. We work so much that we're trying to hire people to work on the weekends so we can keep working on those days. But you put out books, you put out messages about the things you're curious about. And I was gonna say about the block is that be so curious, it's worth sharing. And I think that's like the same thing with you in church and community is that you love the communal curiosity of exploring the universe, exploring the scriptures and exploring faith and putting it out to the world to just see what the world does with it. And I think that's like a really unique thing. It is for you. It's about this presentation, and I've worked for amazing creative directors. Like I had this amazing gift to work for a guy in New York named Hedi Slimane, and he had this ideology that the moment he opened a store, he would never walk back in it because it was no longer for him. It was now for everyone else. And he would always send these really annoying French people on FaceTime to like spy on the store, which was, crazy. But I find that like there's an offering in creativity and a sacrifice because it costs you something. And then there's this release of that something that you can't control anymore. And humans, we have this hard thing. Once we can't control it, then, it sometimes loses its value to us. So that's all. I think just the curiosity of seeing love being spread throughout humanity.
Yeah, and I'm 66 now. I'm like,
You look good.
and it's the older I get, the less I fear, the less I live a life of obligation, and the more I think I live a life of intention. And I feel so free. I just don't care what people think about me. I don't care.
I care. I care enough for the both of us.
Yeah, but to me, I think thinking deeply is a responsibility all of us have. And I think taking time to stop and reflecting on life, it's really, really important. And if you don't take time to slow down, to process things, you're going to miss so many things that God has for you in your life. And I had to, everyone has to compensate for whatever is inside of them that is both a strength and a weakness. And I have this neurological thing where I have, I can't stop data, from
What do you
going
mean?
into my brain.
So you're like the internet?
I have like slow shutter speed is what I was told, or my brain doesn't close properly or something.
You have a lot of input of data
Yeah,
from the world.
and
Yeah.
so early on in my life, I would end up in like fetal positions because I just couldn't stop the information from coming into my head, and it almost killed me. I felt like, and I felt paralyzed in life. The moment I started focusing on serving people, it changed me. Like the moment I stopped thinking about myself and just thinking about how do I help people and how do I serve people. And I think a lot of times our healing can only come when we put others above ourselves, which is why I think community is so important and what we're doing together really, really matters. And we have one last question. Let's close up to that one.
Yeah. What's your name?
Marie.
Hey, Marie.
Hey, nice to meet you. Excited to meet you guys here. My question is, sometimes struggling with the next step and like being curious, being creative, wanting to go into different avenues, knowing the right next step and like how much sometimes to trust God, ask God, but when to know kind of to push yourself forward and push the next door instead of, I feel like sometimes Christianity can be so much in a position of like, yeah, just wait for God and sit in your seat, but I'm more of a doer. I'm like, what can I do next? And then kind of knowing the balance between waiting for God and going for it and pushing for the next step.
So your question is, what do you do next?
Yeah.
If you want to get more
what's the
involved.
right next step and like.
That's a great question.
Versus like the, but like when to push versus when to wait on God.
Oh, yeah. That it's interesting.
We got to do quick.
Yeah, whenever I would hear Christians say we need to wait on God, I went and like checked it out in the Bible. It's always helpful. And the only time in the Bible it says to wait on God is when people were trying to go backwards. But we tend to use it like wait on God, like we're so fast or moving faster than God. God's never trying to catch up with you. Okay, so like wait on God doesn't mean you're going too fast. Wait on God means you're going in the wrong direction. So if you're being driven by fear, you need to wait on God because he wants to give you the courage to move forward. But if you're moving by faith, God, I'm convinced, loves proactivity. And I would love to see people of faith actually have more proactivity, not less. Why do we keep needing permission from God to do good things? And you go, I don't know if God wants me to do that. I meet a lot of people who are paralyzed. I don't know what God's will for my life is. Do something good. Just do the most good you can do. You're not going to get to heaven and God goes, why did you go and save all those people in India? I wanted you to go to the Maldives. I had a much different plan for you. And we act as if God's will is a tightrope, and if we don't walk it carefully, he's going to hold it against us. Every metaphor in the Bible is that when you come into a relationship with Jesus, you're now in wide open fields. You are free to run, free to live, free to explore. And so what I would say is when you know the good, do it. And if you are paralyzed by fear, don't do it. That's when you wait on God. Wait on God when you don't have enough courage to live your best, most extraordinary life. Move forward when you have the courage to do it. And by the way, just the next steps. There's some of you here, and this is not like a high pressure kind of day as you can feel. But there's some of you here who maybe came in and you are outside of the faith. You're maybe an atheist or agnostic or something else, and yet something inside of you perhaps has become more open to who Jesus is. Because really, this is all about Jesus. It's about God stepping into human history on our behalf, dying on a cross, being buried and raised from the dead so that we could live fully, completely, freely in him. And I don't want you to miss that. It's just that a lot of times we only say that, and so we don't talk about life as a whole. And God can be found in every aspect of life. So if you're here and you're outside of that faith and you haven't crossed the line of faith and trusted Jesus with your life, I would just love to invite you to just open up your life to Jesus. Even if you're like, I don't know if he's real, just pray this. I don't know if you're real, but if you're real, would you reveal yourself to me? That's all you need to do. You don't have to pretend to have more than you have. So if you're here and you go, I don't know if you're real, God, but I'm open, just tell them that. Maybe you're here and you're at the place where you're going, God, I know you're real, but I haven't trusted you yet. So right now, just say to him, I know you're real, and I choose to trust you, Jesus. There's some of you who are here, and you're at a defining moment, and it's time to say, Jesus, I choose to follow you. I will make you my Lord, my God. I will follow you. I trust you with my life, and that's what you need to do next. And then there's others, if you're here and you already believe in Jesus, but you need to join McLaren in this great mission of creating a community of faith that defies reality, to create a space where people who desperately need to connect, not just to Jesus, but to each other, can have a place where they belong, an imperfect community, a place that will make mistakes, a place that will go through the painful process of growing and learning and becoming. But you cannot expect the world to offer you something better if you're not willing to pay the price to create something better. And so some of you, this is your moment that you decide, I'm going to be a part of Mosaic London and create something extraordinary together. But so wherever you are in your journey, I just want to encourage you to take that next step today. And
We got to close.
yeah,
I'm going to invite McLaren back up.
McLaren, we're going to invite you up. Can you, thank you guys so much for letting
Yeah,
us be here with
appreciate
you
it. Thank you.
tonight.
We went really long, but thank you so much.